The topic of felon voting rights has been a more prevalent topic recently in today's media. Some people believe that felons should have the right to vote and that their right to vote should not be infringed despite they were convicted of a felony. Felons should not have the right to vote, but if there were a claim of policy or compromise to be put in effect, it should have a couple of conditions. Some of the conditions should be of returning felons' voting rights should be reestablished on a case-to-case basis, as well as after the case has been reviewed and approved to move forward in the process, that individual should have all pre-existing fines, probation, or parole sanctions completed and signed off. Another thing that should be considered is the weighing of the seriousness of the crime, the length of the time committed, and if the individual is a repeat offender. It is important to take these things into consideration due to the record of the person as well as the time for the crime they have served. It is especially important to make sure that the felon's case is looked at on a case-to-case basis because the felon voting does not only affect that person but also affects them, their family, as well as the community they live in. Another way to describe this is not having the reinstallment of voting rights be a blanket legislation. Requiring the felon to complete all prior sanctions or pay all fines would ensure that the felon is making steps in a positive direction of improving their relationship with crime, as well as improvements to make not only their lives but the lives of their families better. In the diagram on screen, it divides the opinion of those who have voted and given their opinions on felon voting rights. It divides the chart into three categories, listing them as all Americans, Democrats, and Republicans. From there, it shows the three voting right options given as follows. Felons should permanently lose their right to vote. They should lose their right to vote until they have completed their sentence, and they should not lose their right to vote at all. It is also shown how, on average, most people who voted believed that the felons should lose their right to vote only until they have completed their sentence. This information shows also how the political party of those who voted also affected their vote by showing how more Republican people believed that felons should permanently lose their right to vote, and how more Democratic people believe that felons should not lose their right to vote at all. But coming together on average, between 51 and 54% of those who voted, despite the political party listed, think that felons should only lose their right to vote until the sentence has been completed. To get more opinions from college-age students, I asked a couple fellow students what their opinion was on felon voting rights.
Do you think that the felon should have the right to vote?
As a felon, yes.
Yes, I do believe felons should have the right.
It's under your constitution. After you come out of jail, you should be able to have your full constitutional rights.
Do you think that felons should have the right to vote?
That's a very juicy question. I feel like the only way to respond to that by saying yes, depending on what the case is with why they were arrested. Because if they were like child molesters or like rapists, I don't want them voting.
Do you think felons should have the right to vote?
Yes, I do think felons should have the right to vote because they are still people and they are still Americans, so they should be able to vote.
To conclude, the two sides of the argument are that felons should lose their right to vote and that felons should not lose their right to vote. Despite the claim of policy or compromise, felons should not have the right to vote. A main reason why felons should not have the right to vote is because they did not follow the law, so they should not have the opportunity to vote on it. Some may view the loss of the right to vote for felons as an unrealistic or unfair punishment. But these consequences are not meant to be cruel or unusual, but rather are in place for a reminder and prevention of others from committing the same crime, or the same person committing the same crime again, or committing more after. Despite all these efforts of compromise and claim of policy, felons should ultimately not be reinstalled with the right to vote.